This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1822, Something Old and Something New, Buckaroo Bonzai and Shang-Chi 2.
I'm gonna sing this song for you, Peggy.
No, Peggy.
And anybody else out there who are wasting it. I don't have anything.
This is weird.
Sure is.
Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Leatherstein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
And I'm Chris Eberly. Ian, you picked one of my many favorite parts of the film we're about to discuss.
I was just watching that part not 2 minutes before logging on to the Zoom.
Nice. Well, then clearly I've chosen correctly. Welcome one and all to the show, and we're back yet again. Last week you were graced once again with the luminous tones of Peter Rios and Brian Deemer as they go back into Simonson's Thor and other random comic talk conversation. So anybody who wants some old school CGS, you got it in spades, baby.
I didn't think they'd get that out so fast. Good heavens, I saw it pop up and I'm like, "Oi, that was quick. I didn't even get to start reading it yet."
I know. It's great, and here's hoping that they continue with that, and we'll definitely be cycling in the old and the new on the episodes, and then of course old and new on today's episode, as we review both the adventures of Buckaroo Bonzai across the 8th dimension.
Our latest retro review.
Indeed. And our not-so-retro review, Shang-Chi, Shung-Chi, whatever you want to call him, and The Legend of the Ten Rings, which just came out in theaters this past Friday. Shane will be joining us for the Buckaroo Bonzai portion, and then once we get into spoilers for Shang-Chi, he will be departing. But we'll get things started with the old and then go with the new. But first, of course, a reminder of our sponsors, which are you, the listeners, right there. I see you in cyberspace over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. As every single month, you guys continue to support the show any way you can, and we are greatly appreciative of that. And even if you can't donate to the show, just spreading the word about the show, whether it be on iTunes, Android, or elsewhere, is as good a way of keeping the lights on as anything else. As the more listeners we have, the wider our reach be, and we thank you so much for your continued support.
Here.
/comicgeekspeak for that and more. So Shane, I know that this is one of your favorite movies, and
it is.
And you're the one who put this on the to-do list. So I guess I'll start with you. What is it that makes Buckaroo Bonzai a hit for you?
It's a fun sci-fi romp. I started seeing it I'm 99.9% sure it was on HBO back in the 80s, the first time I saw it. I want to say one of the previews that HBO ran, or one of the trailers I saw, showed a part where Jeff Goldblum says something to the Perfect Tommy and Rico about loving the music, loving the comic books, and then them showing a little clip with a Buckaroo Banzai comic that shows up, I think, later in the movie. And I was like, ooh, okay, I kind of want to see that because, love of comics, kind of the same reason I got hooked on Lost Boys just from the trailer, was just walking around a comic shop. So that's what started it. And then not knowing any of the actors the way I do now and things they have done and what they did before that. But one that I did recognize was Lewis Smith, who played Perfect Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
In another movie that I know my entire family watched on HBO, there was one called Heavenly Kid. I'm 99% sure that's what that's called. And he played kind of a ghost. And I recognized him from that because we had just watched it on HBO. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. So yeah, I was kind of hooked just from those couple aspects, love of sci-fi, Star Wars, Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, all that stuff happening all within these years.
Mhm.
I zeroed in on Buckaroo Bonzai and I watched it a bazillion times as a kid.
Well, the movie that you mentioned before, yes, it's The Heavenly Kid. It came out the next year in 1985.
Okay, so then I kind of watched it backwards in some way, but at some point I recognized, hey, that's the guy that was the Heavenly Kid.
Yep, Bobby Fantana. He played in that. So I guess that's the actual name of the Heavenly Kid in question.
Yeah, yep.
All right.
And I want to say he's a 50s greaser that helps a kid in the modern era. I mean, whatever. It's a silly movie, but it was fun to watch. My mom loved it. So
that sounds 80s enough for me. Definitely.
Yeah. It's same with Charlie Sheen's The Wraith in a very similar fashion, which I also just watched that not long ago. It was on Amazon or something. So
Shane,
I
was the same era.
What's that, Chris?
I said you and I are the same era.
So I'll intersperse it here and go to Murd, as both Murd and I were watching this for the first time.
As was I.
Chris,
Unbelievable!
there you go.
Really,
well,
all of you.
Excellent.
Jeez.
Well,
wow.
I'll head over to Murd for your initial thoughts.
Well, I've been a little curious about this movie for years now because I have read 80s comic books in my time that have had advertisements for the movie in it. Buckaroo Who, and just repeating those words over and over again with a different little block of text describing another facet of the multifaceted Renaissance man, Mr. Banzai. He's a talented neurosurgeon. He's an ace test pilot. He travels the world with his band of maverick scientist musicians, the Hong Kong Cavaliers. He's supported by his network of civilian supporters, the Blue Blazer Regulars. It sounded like a pretty rich concept, honestly. It sounded jam-packed with interesting ideas. And I wanted to see how that played out on the screen, and the answer was messily. Having watched it now, having finally seen it for the first time, in common with the other two non-Shane gentlemen on this call, yeah, it was a movie. It was an 80s movie. It did indeed have a lot of fun ideas in it, but as far as unspooling those ideas and trying to weave them into a story, it came off a bit unsatisfyingly. The pacing was a little weird, the way it jumped from scene to scene. The dialogue, the way the characters interacted with each other, which they tended to deliver their lines while hunched over various pieces of scientific equipment and mumbling to each other rapidly. And I could tell they were trying to avoid talking like a Flash Gordon serial. They didn't want to. Great Scott! The red electroids, the Planet 10. It's just. Oh, that was interesting.
It's old
deal
school.
With his dog, and I think my dog heard Chris's dog over the Zoom call downstairs.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
It's classic CGS squared here.
Sorry about that. That was the dog.
Oh no, please!
Right out
Old
two
school.
different windows.
Exactly. Dogs in stereo. That's it. That's what we like to see. Yeah.
That's our technological advancement here in 2021. But so anyway, it was. There were a lot of really cool sci-fi concepts here. I love the idea that it's what we're basically dealing with here is an amped up new wave Doc Savage and his retainers in Buckaroo Bonzai and his Hong Kong Cavaliers. I wish that they had done a slightly better job of introducing the whole cast to us, as they did Buckaroo himself in that little Star Wars style, not at all a rip-off crawl at the beginning. They could have done just like a freeze frame of each Hong Kong Cavalier with a little superimposed caption of his or her, because there was Mrs. Johnson in there, specialty, like their scientific specialty and the instrument they play in the band, maybe with a little guitar lick to go along with it. That would have gone a long way. And if maybe the dialogue had been a little more clearly delivered to help keep the viewer engaged, as it was, it all the storytelling and this the narrative sequentiality was a bit murky. It's not that the plot was that difficult to follow, but I had a hard time staying engaged, for the reasons cited. It was a little bit choppy, and it was a fantastic cast. just all your favorite portrayers of weirdos from the 80s were there. You got your Jeff Goldblum, you got your John Lithgow, you got Christopher Lloyd and his fellow Taxi alumnus Vincent Schiavelli. You had Yakov Smirnoff in a bit role. You had Carl Lumbly. Interesting to note how many of his most memorable roles are playing aliens. He did it again here. You had some pretty good creature design in the Lectroids, red and black. But it all just kind of came together in a big hazy blob. I appreciated that it had a sense of humor, didn't take it seriously. It almost had kind of a police squad kind of sense of humor at points, because if you look closely, you could see like little gags and the signs and things in the background. So yeah, it had some. There were the seeds of a pretty good movie here, but the execution just came off as kind of sloppy. I don't think. I think the filmmakers had the ideas together more clearly in their heads. And didn't realize that they didn't transfer them to the screen in a way that was going to be completely intelligible to people watching along. So yeah, I appreciate the 80s bizarrerie of it. You know, if I had to sum it up in a single phrase, it would be Mondo Borrow. But yeah, I found that I fell asleep during the third act when I was trying to watch it last night around 1 a.m. So I had to rewatch like the last half hour of it this afternoon. And you know, I found that I enjoyed it that much more during that half hour reviewing, not just because I was completely conscious, but also because the daylight was filtering through the window outside. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got that flashback to my days as an 80s child. And here's where I can commiserate with you and Chris Shane. Just watching this thing or things like it on HBO during one of the free trials I occasionally got access to as a kid. And when I watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Gremlins every time they were on, Weird Science as well. And just, you know, killing like a lazy Sunday afternoon watching B films of that decade and maybe the previous. So yeah, it triggered a little bit of, I know we don't have a word in our language for it, but nostalgia for that which has not experienced. This is a movie I probably would have loved as much as you do, Shane, if I had grown up watching it. As it is, it just came off as kind of strange and messy, and it didn't hold my attention the way it should have, although there were some memorable moments, certainly, and some very strong performances, especially from the aliens.
Yep. Yeah. My basic response to this movie. Huh? That it was very much a a lot of guttural noises were leaving my mouth as I was watching this.
A new way to say, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't hate it. I 100% will say I did not hate it. By the way, unintentionally, our second retro movie review featuring Clancy Brown. I will point that out.
Yep.
But this movie to me is the equivalent of an 8-year-old boy grabbing his action figures and making a movie out of that. Like, and then I'm gonna take the cowboy and he's gonna get attacked by aliens, and then pew pew pew. Oh, the cowboy's also a scientist. Oh, and then you go from there, and you know that's all well and good. Like I think it's super fun, and there's a lot of as Murd said, a lot of good concepts to be found in this movie. It's just the plot is unintelligible, and I really couldn't get past that in the end, no matter how much fun I was having. Although it is also interesting to point out that in the end credits of the movie, that costume, that outfit that Buckaroo is wearing is clearly the exact same outfit that Matt Smith wore as the Doctor. So we all know where they got their influence from, because like bow ties, suit, and all, that is Matt Smith Doctor, and now I at least know where they got that idea from. But yeah, it was an enjoyable time. It just wasn't exactly a linear time, because you know, stories go like this most of the time. This one went and so it goes. Chris, your thoughts?
Shane, I want to thank you, because this was a glaring hole in my 80s cinema viewing, and especially, you know, a geek like me, and I didn't know what to expect at all. Like Murd mentioned, I'd seen the advertisements in comics for years. You know, I remember like both growing up then and back issues, Buckaroo Bonzai. I mean, I knew, you know, the cast. I was like, I got to watch this movie. I mean, it clearly has a place in sort of the 80s firmament. So this is a great excuse to do that. Let me start by paraphrasing one scene that I think captures the essence of the movie. So Jeff Goldblum in his magnificent, totally nonsensical cowboy outfit.
Skid Colt from the waist up and Bath
Yep.
Bat from the waist
Yeah,
down.
and he's
Yep,
named,
yep.
and he's from New Jersey, right?
Yep.
And like even New Brunswick at one point. And he's running through one of the chambers in the lab complex, one of the Cavaliers, and he pauses. He goes, "Why is there a watermelon here?" And the Cavalier goes, "I'll tell you later." And they just keep moving. And I was like, that's the movie. Like,
Yeah.
there's, and I mean that in the best possible way. Like this movie to me was like, and hit it on the head. I was going to say the same thing. Actually, it's like Doc Savage meets like a new wave Renaissance man, like an 80s fever dream.
Mhm.
Like when they're in like his massive RV,
Yeah.
and he's got like the samurai outfit on, he's doing like the ritual, so like there's no reason for it, it's just there. And then he just goes on to something else. I was riveted. I could not turn away from this film. It was like, I wish I could have been in the 80s and like in a double feature with Real Genius, because they're kind of in the same
Yeah.
sort of 80s niche. You know what I mean, Shane? Like,
Oh, yeah.
like there's this absurd pseudoscientific
Fantasticalness.
aspect to it. I loved every second of it. It's a ridiculous film. It's completely absurd,
And it's a hot mess in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think if a lot of people watched it today who didn't grow up in this time period, I don't know if they well, Ian, you didn't grow up in the time period. It sounds like
well, I mean, I was born the year that it came out. So that, you know, 84. So yes, I did live, you know, a solid, 6 years of my life in the 80s. And we can also probably count 1990 and 1991 because I don't think the 90s actually became the 90s until about 92, 93. So
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
So so well, here, another scene that I think captures the movie perfectly. Near the end, when they defeated the aliens and he's going to check on Ellen Barkin, who supposedly has died, in his headquarters. And one of his men goes, the president wants to know, is everything all right, or should we bomb Russia? And he just goes, without even stopping, he just goes, 1 yes, 2 no, and he moves on. And I'm just like, the man is just has his hand in everything, even the president of the United States, which was also this weird, deranged performance in that movie. Like in his back bed and the whole
traction bed.
Yep.
Like even the president at his beck and call. But Ian, I think your analogy was right on the money. It's like someone had spilled all their toys in like the playroom, and like, all right, and we all did this as kids, right? Let's kind of what can we come up with this brew we have here in front of us?
Oh,
so
yeah.
We've got the cowboy, we've got the samurai shtick. There's so many like 80s like pop culture silliness that they kind of like put it into a stew in this movie and like threw it all together. By the way, did you guys watch the version with the introduction about the past with his parents?
I just discovered that after all these years. I don't
That's
go
the one
out.
I watched.
I don't
know if
go
you
out
saw that.
and actively search out for things like this. I just stumble across them. And I was looking at the list of actors just to get re-familiar with some of the lesser known ones. And I see Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm like, what?
His mother.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
So then I did a quick Google search and watched the deleted scene of the opening. I'm like, oh my God, how have I never seen this before?
Yeah, I did not see that. The version that I saw started with the race car. So that's the version that I saw.
So basically there's it's like a 5-10 minute scene.
Yeah.
Narrated appropriately by Clancy Brown because he's the voice. And
in a documentary kind of
in documentary style, like kind of
not
like
as rawhide as
no. Well, probably as rawhide, but narrating a film about Buckaroo Bonzai's life.
Banzai. So you see, it's like shot like Shane said, like this faded documentary style.
Yeah.
And it's showing his parents, his father's Japanese, right?
Yep, his father's Japanese, his mother's American.
His mother, and they're coming up with the whole vehicle to break into the dimension. And they show what goes awry and how John Lithgow is involved in all that. And by the way, his performance in this movie, the accent he was delivering,
oh my God,
was so off the hook. I mean, I was
The
like,
credit
trying
said
to
he
be
had a
like,
dialect coach, so they actually brought in somebody to teach him how to talk like that. I don't know if this was a professional Italian
stereotypical
teacher or
over-the-top
just like
Italian.
the guy, the owner of the local pizza parlor. I don't know, but somebody worked with him on that.
Yeah.
And the way it felt was almost reminiscent to the Italian Nazis from that horrible Captain America movie. Like he's doing Italian, but he's also kind of doing German at the same time, and I'm not sure which way it falls.
But there's Jamie Lee Curtis, yeah.
Yes.
But go ahead, Shane. I'm sorry.
I just couldn't believe I'd never seen this before.
Oh, so you just watched this today? Then?
Oh yeah, like 10 minutes ago,
Okay.
before the show started.
Wow.
I did a quick Google search because I saw on the cast list, I'm like, Jamie Lee Curtis, really? And then it said deleted scene, so I put in Buckaroo Bonzai deleted scene Jamie Lee Curtis videos, and that's what popped up, and I watched it. I couldn't believe it.
So, Chris, are you saying that there's an extended cut that reinserts it into the movie, or
well, the DVD I have, which I got a gazillion years ago,
Uh-huh.
has the theatrical version, then it has the extended cut version.
Okay,
I don't think I have a DVD copy like that.
Wow.
Shane, it's all yours.
Interesting. Well, I'll go check mine because that doesn't mean anything. I got my copy years and years ago.
Yep.
And at least 5 years ago, I got it on iTunes. So I have only watched my digital copy.
Well, it was.
forever.
I'm glad I saw it for the first time with that because it gave. I don't know if depth is the right word for this movie, but it kind of filled out.
It gives a little
more
perspective
of the backstory of why he was the way he was. By the way, the other thing, the moment where the movie really took off for me though, because it was so freaking weird, and Ian debuted with it when he comes out with his band, who are all armed, by the way, which is just fantastic.
They're all his buds as well.
And he sees Ellen Barrett's character. He breaks into Skyliner and says, "They don't have you." And even in the movie, everybody's like, "What the hell is going on here?" Because the audience is thinking the same thing. So that I nearly pissed myself. Like it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But somehow it's really satisfied me.
and that's not something I usually like. Like I like ridiculous movies. I like Beetlejuice. I like, oh God, what would be another one? I like Hot Shots. I like some ridiculousness to my movies. I don't like the Naked Gun movies. I just don't.
Oh,
I never have. I can't get into them. I don't know why, because I like other things just as ridiculous. But I think for me, this hit when I was, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
Perfect time with all of the sci-fi stuff I was watching. Weird enough that I just got hooked. The music, the characters, the silliness, the comics that are mentioned. I mean, they're mentioned like twice for 2 seconds each, but it grabbed me. And I would bet I watched it 100 times on HBO easily.
And that's just it. I like the alternate world that has been crafted here. I'd love to know more about it. The movie just didn't want to tell me more about it.
Well, and we kept hoping and hoping for the next movie that's teased at the end with a title
Against the World Crime League,
and it never happened. I mean, think about the way these characters are. The Justice League being a multi-functional group of very colorful, different characters. I don't know. I just fell in love with the movie, and I have watched it over and over and over again. And to the point now is I can understand and appreciate what you say, Adam, about dialogue being a little bit weird, being a little bit quick, being kind of low over top of stuff, hard to hear at times. But watching it 1,000 times, I kind of have it memorized. I don't even need to watch. It's one of those things I pop in the background for noise and I just listen to it like I'm singing my favorite Billy Joel song or something. It's just there and I'm enjoying it. And I tune in for what's happening and then I tune back out to what I'm focused on doing.
I'm just sorry that in all the years I owned a comic shop, I never had the sense to play this movie in the store because
would have been perfect background noise for Wild.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a fun, irreverent reminder of my youth, and again came into perfect time for me to just absolutely fall in love with it. I know our friend Jamie's dear friend Scott Powers absolutely loves this movie too, and we've talked about it many times over the years. There's just something about it that grabbed me. And then something else I learned today, if you scroll through the cast list, it goes through Peter Weller, John Lithgow, Ellen Barkin, Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Lloyd, blah blah blah. You get down to Ronald Lacey, President Widmark, which is one of the aliens.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Nazi from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, that's right.
I near shit when I saw that about an hour ago. Again,
Wait,
all these years.
he was the guy with the glasses, the agent, right?
Yeah.
Whose face melted at the end.
Yep.
Okay.
I couldn't believe it. And that's what I like about all the useless knowledge in my head is great, and I have a lot of fun when topics come up, but I don't know everything, and I still get a kick out of learning about stuff like this. To learn that he was in it and Jamie Lee Curtis could have been in it and is in a deleted scene that I just was able to see. You can't get better than that. I still learn stuff about all these movies I've loved for years, and I've looked up information about them. I just never noticed these two bits of information.
The cast, like you said, though, is a who's who of 80s luminaries. Like even like Stephen Root, who's the villain from Beverly Hills Cop. He's the psychiatric employee that Lithgow murders in the beginning.
Dan Hedaya,
Dan Hedaya is in it. Vincent Schiavelli, who was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, among other movies. I mean, I was like, this person's in it. This, like, and I have to wonder at the time, did the actors, how they viewed what they were doing? Do they see it as a total tongue-in-cheek absurdist romp, or I always wonder when I see movies like how the cast felt about it.
Pretty sure there is a documentary out there. I did come across of something that noted Clancy Brown and Ellen Barkin narrating, and it seemed like something that I should look up and watch as a telltale for the movie.
I was disappointed that Clancy Brown, Rawhide, as he was known in the film, actually died.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was one of the more interesting Cavaliers, actually.
And a mention as well, since we did mention it on our recent previews, that the closest we'll get to the sequel happening is coming out from Dark Horse in October. Buckaroo Bonzai Against the World Crime League, a hardcover written by E.M. Rauch, tells the story that we never saw in novel form. So that's as close as we will get to a second movie. As there's a hideous rights battle going on between the originators of Buckaroo Banzai and MGM, or at least there was for a while, which was one of the main reasons why we never got more of this back in the day. And even as late as 2016, there was still a rights battle going on between the creators and MGM to try to, I guess, get it out and maybe shop it elsewhere. But
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Is Rauch the screenwriter of the original film?
I believe that is the case. Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
E.M. Rauch, written by. Yep.
E.M. Rauch. You got it. So it's
I saw that coming, but I don't know if I pre-ordered it. I'm gonna have to check my list of stuff, and if not, I'll have to get it. I completely forgot that was coming out.
Yeah, I remembered us mentioning it very recently, actually, on a previews episode. So wanted to make sure that we pointed that out here. The other thing that I want to point out is some of the weird notes here on IMDb. I know you mentioned the voice coach Murd, but did you see who the voice coach was for John Lithgow?
I did, but the name didn't mean anything to me.
He was a tailor on the 20th Century Fox lot.
There we go.
With a heavy Italian accent. So that's who they used as their voice coach. Essentially just some guy who worked on the lot. So clearly he had plenty of experience. The other thing is that at the end of the movie, when they're doing that, walking away sequence,
which I loved.
Yeah.
The stand-in music that they used, because the music was not ready, was Uptown Girl by Billy Joel. Because it had the exact same tempo of the music that was going to be used later on. So that's what was playing on set when that was happening.
My mom absolutely loved that part. I mean, she was not a big, huge sci-fi fan or anything. I mean, she would tolerate me watching that kind of stuff, but she absolutely loved that scene. And part of it was just because of Perfect Tommy. She really got a kick him, like that he was in this no shirt, white jacket, frosted hair kind of thing. And I don't know. She just, every time that came on, she would stop whatever she was doing and sit down and watch it.
Perfect Tommy was almost Michael Madsen, apparently, but he had to turn it down when The Natural was filming.
Oh, wow.
It's probably a good choice. The natural.
I think so too. Which actually, funny enough, I also just watched for the first time the other day.
Really?
So,
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's
I haven't seen that one in a while, but I
Now you
have
should
seen
read.
it.
Now you should read the book. Very different ending.
Okay. I'll have to see that. Yeah.
Book is tremendous.
Yeah, but in another Star Trek connection, the quote "No matter where you go, there you are" appears on the dedication plaque on the USS Excelsior.
Yep.
So a reference there.
Yep.
Now, can I just try to piece together the actual plot of the movie? I'm sorry. Like,
Well, it's not hard. It's no worse than any Doctor Who episode, so it
fair.
shouldn't be bad.
Yeah, and I mean, the more I think about it, the more it is basically just American Doctor Who, done before Fox tried to do it and failed miserably.
I still like that Fox one. I've watched it.
It's an excellent. Okay, the Doctor himself is great.
Oh,
the rest
Paul
of
McGann, he's fantastic.
Paul McGann's terrific, and I'm glad that he at least got a couple of more scenes as the Doctor, later on. But
Me too.
the movie
And
itself is a little
and
bit.
total sidebar, he's got a whole slew of radio dramas.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does.
Which is fantastic.
Yep. And I think Chris Eccleston also is going to be.
He just started. Yep.
Yeah. Although he may have been replaced. Now that I think about it, I think there was something happened recently that may have wound up actually changing that to someone else playing the role. But don't quote me on that. Nevertheless, I know aliens are taking over. Only some people can see what they look like. Buckaroo gets shocked at one point, and because of that, he can see what they look like.
And knows the formula now to help others see what's going on.
Right. And are these the aliens that his parents found at one point?
Well, so in the regular movie that I have seen for all my life, excluding this deleted scene that I just saw,
Sure,
it all hinges on him continuing work from the scientist that is with him that was friends of his parents.
right.
And you get the flashback to 1930 with John Lithgow's character before he became a loony bin, from getting sucked into the wall, where they were creating their own overthruster to do exactly what it takes all these years until the 80s for Buckaroo to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dr. Lizardo, he starts off before it's ready. If he would have waited, it very well could have been that they could have gotten it ready to where it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the scientists in there were just getting it ready when Dr. Lizardo decided, oh, it's time to go. And he set everything in motion. Once he jumped through the wall and was in the other dimension, that's when the aliens got a hold of him and somehow transposed one of them in him. And he came out.
Yeah. Okay.
And then at some point, I'm pretty sure, because I didn't finish the movie today, but at some point they mentioned how these are all the aliens they came in around the time of War of the Worlds.
Okay.
Yes.
And came through the 8th dimension to Earth. Now they're all trying to get back home. It's never really clear about whether they're actually now trying to take over Earth or just get back home because they've all been stranded too long.
Yeah, they want to get out of there.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that there's two different factions
yep.
of Lectroids. Like there's
Yep.
the red Lectroids who are the bad guys, and the peace-loving black Lectroids. And the red Lectroids were banished from their home planet, Planet 10, the 8th dimension, Phantom Zone style. And Dr. Lizardo was the first person to breach that
And get out.
to get them out. And then Buckaroo widened it further. And that's what sets into motion the events that they're going to use his overthruster thing to power their spaceship to get off of Earth and get back to Planet 10 and try to take over again.
Now, because of what happened to Dr. Lizardo happened is probably why all those almost 50 years, nothing really happens, because they were perfecting the overthruster until that point.
Okay.
But you never really get the story of his parents that you get in that deleted scene in the movie. You just get that they died.
Okay.
It's never really explained like what that scene explains it. Because the only thing in the past you see is Dr. Lizardo and the other scientist working, not his parents at all, in that warehouse in 1938.
My question is, so Ellen Barkin, is she playing his dead wife come back to life, or the twin sister of his
The
dead
twin
wife?
sister.
Okay.
Okay.
So his wife died.
Right.
This is his twin sister. Her twin sister is what
Okay.
they figure. Because
Okay.
it's never said, yep, that's who I am. It's just that it's got to be because she looks exactly like Buckaroo's dead wife.
This is also how you know that it's a comic book, not just that element, but also the fact that her name is literally Penny Pretty, because you're so pretty. That's
and I don't think it's spelled Pretty. It's Piddy or something.
Exactly.
Pity.
Yeah, pretty.
Penny pretty.
A note as well that this just cemented to me how many different genres of sci-fi Jeff Goldblum has been in over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Because this really just hits it all. Like, I mean, he's in this sort of, Doctor Who-esque thing, Jurassic Park, The Fly, Thor. Like, his sci-fi record is pretty damn good, and I give him major props for that.
Well, and
also, Independence Day, obviously.
And also, talking about Doctor Who, this was also at the time when I was discovering Doctor Who on PBS.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So all of these kooky, very bad special effects, these strangely designed ships, they all kind of seemed normal to me because I was seeing it on Doctor Who anyway.
Right.
It all made perfect sense to me.
And Peter Weller, I must say, excellent performance. I think that for a guy who's mostly known as RoboCop, where for most of the time he's using the same style of speaking, he can really pack on the emotion and the oomph when he wants to, and I've only seen that out of him a few times. I mean, he's done tons of things over the years, but like this type of role is not something I've seen out of Peter Weller in many other instances.
I think he understood what he was doing and that, like, what he was supposed to be playing in that movie.
Yeah.
I think he nailed it.
Yep.
And I really think that they were thinking that there would be another movie. Like to me, in a lot of the cast, it seemed like they put a lot of effort into doing what they were doing, whether it turned out good or not in the performance. If you're seeing it, like some of you for the first time, I can see where it wouldn't look so great. But back then, man, it was just fantastic to watch.
Well, I read that it bombed at the box office.
Oh, it totally did.
Then it became a cult film, of course.
Didn't even make up half its budget. And
no,
to begin with.
And it really soared on HBO and videotapes and rentals and word of mouth spread, and it went everywhere then.
I've seen midnight showings of this at local movie houses in New York a couple times listed. Like, I know it's a favorite of specifically Nighthawk Cinema, which has locations in Williamsburg and Prospect Park. They'll regularly do like midnight screenings of Buckaroo Bonzai because they make it work, and I can see the cult film aspect of it, but I can also very much see why it flopped.
Oh yeah,
and I think that it may have actually just done better as an indie to begin with. Without somebody like MGM behind it, which could very well be why the rights are in such limbo today. Is that maybe because they didn't make their money back? They weren't able to get the rights back or something along those lines. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. But I've watched it over and over and over again and enjoyed every minute of it.
I am super glad that I've seen it, Shane. I don't know exactly the next time I'm going to see it, but I am beyond glad to have finally added this to my echelon of films that I've seen.
And if you read the crawl and you watch the movie and you get into, all right, he's kind of Batman. He traveled the world learning all of these different things that he would need. He's extremely intelligent, very capable, very charismatic. He's surrounded by an eclectic group of people that are just as charismatic and almost as smart in a lot of ways, certainly just as adventurous as him. They all have a fortress that they go to as their home base. They have a support system like the Shadow Wood and the Blue Blazer Irregulars, which was just a fantastic concept to me. And me as an outsider watching goes, ooh, that's something I could do. I could be a Blue Blazer Irregular. That'd be great. It hit on all cylinders.
And there was a Marvel comic released of
Yes.
the film.
Yes, there was.
Yeah,
That's what appeared on screen.
exactly.
It
Yeah,
was fantastic product placement.
yep. I'd love to maybe track down the actual back issues themselves at some point and see just how it compares to the movie and whether or not there's things in that never even made it into the movie.
I can't remember if they collected it into a one-shot thing like they do the Indiana Jones, the Flash Gordons, things like that. The Muppets Take Manhattan got one of those.
Oversized, like tabloid sized.
Yeah. I sort of remember seeing it, but I know I don't have it. I know I had the comics at one point back when I was a kid. I don't have them anymore.
I did find an image of the cover to issue 1 here, and pretty spot on rendition of Weller. I'll say that it does actually feel like both the movie and the likeness is pretty on point. So yeah, 2-issue miniseries. Let me see if I can find who actually wrote it. Let's see. If I click on it here, it is written by. Doesn't actually tell me. Well, then that says how well that is. The Marvel database itself doesn't actually tell me who wrote it, but I will track this down as we continue to speak here. But special effects actually weren't that terrible. They actually, I wouldn't quite say they hold up.
No, they don't hold up. No.
But there's nothing that shout out to me like this is fake, which can happen sometimes with earlier movies. It's just it's of its time and of the budget that they had to work with.
Yep. And I had to think that they had some kind of money. Like you said, the special effects weren't the worst I'd ever seen. They sunk money into a bust painted with Buckaroo Bonzai and the Hong Kong Cavaliers. I mean, you wouldn't do that if you had just a little bit of money in the budget. That seems kind of superfluous. Could have been any bus. I don't know. It held up for the time for the special effects. I think the worst one for me were the way the ships were designed because they just didn't make sense to me, especially the interiors. But they were also strangely fun in what they were trying to do. And watching Buckaroo trying to pilot it and pull in different things, and all of a sudden he's okay for a little bit to fly around.
Yep.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it was the set design was eclectic, and it had kind of a punk rock DIY feel to it.
Yeah,
they kind of cobbled them together out of any junk that they were able to find.
Yep.
And they justified it by saying that these electroids were kind of like nest building creatures, and that they just kind of grabbed junk and put them together into nests.
Yeah. They were what, Pac-Leds from Star Trek? That would be a good equivalency, maybe?
Yeah. Make it go. By the way, I kind of had a feeling, and I was correct. Bill Mantlo, it was the writer of the Buckaroo Bonzai comic book, with art by Mark Teixeira or Texiera, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and Armando Gil are both listed as the artists on Amazon for it. So I'm not sure if Texiera just did the cover and Armando Gil did the interiors or vice versa. But yeah, the one and only Bill Mantlo wrote the adaptation of the 2-issue miniseries, right in his heyday. And there's some unofficial continuations of Buckaroo Bonzai also available. There was a paperback in 2014 which was an actual comic book, Buckaroo Bonzai: Return of the Screw, which was written by Mac Rauch, with W.D. Richter on art and Stephen Thompson on art as well. This is long out of print though, so if you can find it at a random comic book store or back issue bin or what have you, you can find another adventure of Buckaroo Bonzai. But that's another thing that's happened over the past couple of years. Was it single issue or a miniseries? It's listed as volume 1. And it's a trade paperback, so I'm assuming it was a miniseries. I kind of want to say I had the first issue of one and I wasn't too keen on it and didn't bother with the rest, but I could be misremembering that. Well, fair enough. All right, gentlemen, what do we give it? I think it definitely deserves some frickin' swears. And Chris, we'll start with you. What do you give it?
We go out of 4, don't we?
Out of 5.
Out of 5. For what it is, I have to give it a 3.
Fair enough. Murd?
2.5.
exactly where you are. I think it is middle of the road for me. I think that if I'd watched it when I was younger, I would probably have a similar affinity for it. It's just watching it for the first time now, as my tastes have changed a little bit, and it's, doesn't have that, youth appeal that it would have had otherwise. Yeah, two and a half.
I can't give it anything less than a 4.5 or a 5. I mean, I just have too much love for it for nostalgia's sake. As a movie itself, yeah, I'd probably give it a 3.5, because it's a serviceable sci-fi movie, B movie. It's something that you'd normally expect to see
Oh, it's a glorious B movie.
teased on Mystery Science Theater about, and that would be as well too. But because of what it is and how much I watched it growing up, I rate it much higher.
Oh yeah, and frankly, if there was a way to either reboot it or do a sequel, I'd be curious to see what it would look like today.
I'm surprised they haven't tried, but again, with the rights all tied up, I can understand now why it hasn't been better tried again.
Yep. Well, thank you, Dark Horse, for very much getting the rights in one way or the other, and getting the original screenwriter back to give us the proper treatment of a sequel that we probably should have gotten years ago. So there we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right, we move on from something old to something new, and Shane, will go non-spoiler just so you can see what our general thoughts are, and then we'll do for the night. We just had our second big Marvel release of the summer season, if you want to call it that, as now we're approaching fall, but we're not quite there yet. And we had Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. I'm going to pronounce it Shang because that's how it was pronounced in the movie. It has been stated in multiple places that it can be pronounced any damn way you please, because it is not a real Chinese name, and henceforth can be anywhere you want. So when the creator called it Shang-Chi, he was not wrong. And we'll just leave it at that. But nevertheless, the movie calls him Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings.
All the different dialectal variations of the Chinese language that exist. There's many different ways to be right here, folks.
Yes, indeed. Yep. And some very excellent postings by friend of the show and friend of mine, Mr. Raf Suhu, has confirmed that, as nobody I know is more into Chinese mythology and also Shang-Chi himself than him. So I will take that as a sign of approval. We can pronounce it any damn well we please, and we're probably going to throughout the course of this movie review, as we forget that it's Shang-Chi. But this is Marvel Cinematic's version of it. So obviously it's going to be a bit different than the original Shang-Chi.
Not just a bit.
A bit, more than a bit.
Yeah.
And I feel there's no way to start this off other than with Mr. Chris Eberly. So, sir, the floor is yours. Initial impressions on Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and here's why. Because I went into it knowing it would be nothing like the character I grew up reading.
Sure.
Basically, I think it's a really entertaining addition to the ever-expanding, sprawling Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it's essentially a different character with the same name, and who also has a daddy issue. But otherwise, it's a completely different character. It's not the Shang-Chi of the comic book at all, actually. Yeah. Which I'm not saying that in any negative way, because I wasn't expecting to do it, because I just knew they wouldn't for a whole host of reasons.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I know as well as anybody that we weren't going to get Fu Manchu in this movie. Like that's
that's the obvious stuff, of course. I'm referring more to the fact that the Shang-Chi of the comic, that's a very moody, introspective character that was deeply rooted in espionage,
right,
and was not an Americanized character at all.
Sure.
At all. Like he was struggling constantly to try to fit into the West. Mm-hmm. So the tone, like I really like the lead actor's performance quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
He just played a different character.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's a character that's going to work well in the MCU. I think it's a great character for the MCU world. But it's not Shang-Chi. It's a different character.
Right. I think that I don't have the Marvel comic history with the character that you do, Chris. Far from it. I've seen Shang-Chi show up in in New Avengers. I've seen him show up in team books more than I've seen him show up on his own. Whether it be guest appearances, whether it be Heroes for Hire, of the sort. And I got an idea of what the character was from that, but even by then he had changed significantly from his roots in the 70s to a more kung fu-esque hero that Marvel decided to make him, and it made perfect sense for what the character was at the time. Going into this, I also fully expected that we would not get really anything from the comics outside of some smatterings here and there. What we got instead was easily, and I mean easily, the best damn action movie the Marvel Cinematic Universe has brought us so far. The fight choreography in this is delightful, and it takes its roots from Jackie Chan, from Crouching Tiger, from all the right sources, and weaves together a picture that stands on its own as something significantly different than what we've gotten elsewhere. While at the same time also still tying itself into the existing Marvel Cinematic Universe. I am thoroughly impressed by just how well they wrote this character's personality and origin and made him stand out. While at the same time taking some liberties with existing characters. We'll get into the Mandarin and how that was very, very different. But I mean, you can tell here, anybody who saw the trailer knew that this was not going to be the 10 rings that we know from the comics. This was going to be a little bit different. And it was a lot different. We'll say that. I said before on the show, and I'll say it again, I don't think we could have done that so soon after Thanos, because so many of the characteristics of the comic book 10 rings repeat themselves in the Infinity Gauntlet, and it would have been too much of an also-ran. Instead, they gave us something very, very different, and the Chinese mythology that they build in here as well, loved it, absolutely loved it, and was blown away by how much I loved it. Murd?
Well, I'm not as familiar with the Shang-Chi of the comics as Chris is. And incidentally, on another note about the pronunciation of the name, I think it can be helpful to pronounce the name of the film character Shang-Chi. Disney wants us to. Just as, not only because it's closer to, I guess, the mainstream pronunciation, as it would be in Chinese, but also because it'll help us differentiate the character we got in the film from the one we've seen in the comics for half a century.
Good point.
So Simu Liu's character can be Shang-Chi, and the character in the comics can be Shang-Chi. Because, I just, as I was started to say, I don't know Shang-Chi of the comics as well as Chris does, not nearly. But I know enough to know that he doesn't bear much resemblance to what we got on the screen here. He was more of like a Bruce Lee meets James Bond kind of figure. He worked for the MI6, the British intelligence service under Sir Dennis Nayland Smith. And he spent a lot of his time just kind of meditating and training himself in between being sent on these very dangerous, high intrigue missions for that outfit. He really had not Americanized at all, is right, because he spent most of his time in the United Kingdom. But in any event, once I made up my mind that this was not going to be anything like what was in the comics, and since I'm not that familiar with the comics to begin with, that was not difficult for me to make my peace with. I just went in and enjoyed the movie for what it was. You'd mentioned earlier, Ian, that this was not quite the movie you were expecting. It was the movie I was expecting based on the previews that we had seen. It was going to turn out to be like a high fantasy and action film. I felt that the special effects were absolutely breathtaking. I was impressed by the fight choreography as well. The characters pretty well rendered, but I feel like a couple of them kind of had their arcs unfinished. And part of that is because obviously this thing is going to be sequelized. There'll be more movies with these characters in the future. Another part of it is probably because, like, one of the central themes here is one about the struggle for identity among Asian Americans. That might be one of the reasons why we don't really see Shang-Chi finish his journey. He's made his peace. He's got closure with his father, but still, what is he doing there? So, and I appreciated the character dynamic between Simu Liu's character and Awkwafina's character, Katie.
Yep.
That was a valuable relationship. It transcended just Awkwafina being there for comedy relief, which some people have said. So yeah, it was a very enjoyable ride. It didn't feel on balance very much like a Marvel movie for me. Sometimes I needed to kind of check the details. Funnily enough, when Razor Fist was on screen was one of the moments when it felt most Marvel to me, or when the scene in the Macau Fight Club was another Marvel moment. Not to give too much away for the man in the room who hasn't actually seen it.
Right.
But yeah, that I think is probably one of the something that they were going for, since there's kind of an active campaign at Marvel Studios right now to broaden the definition of what a Marvel movie is or should feel like. They're showing us, hey, a Marvel movie can be this martial fantasy thing too, in addition to just being, the Avengers and whatnot. So yeah, I was pretty satisfied, pretty entertained. Curious as to what the next stage is going to be for the characters.
Yeah, and I mean, as a note, I mean, obviously we all saw this in theaters. I saw this here in the Bronx. This was only was this the second? Yeah, this was the second movie that I saw at my nearest movie theater to me, which is the AMC Bay Plaza. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I saw nobody there. Not too soon after movies reopened, and enjoyed that, and then went and saw Shang-Chi. And I think that it was about, I'd say maybe 3/4 full, my theater, maybe even a little bit more than that. And current policy up until maybe literally 3 days from now is that you don't have to show your vaccination when you go in the door. You will have to after that. But people were pretty good about keeping their masks on. 20 people took them off when they sat down. I wasn't expecting any less because that's the way things are right now. But things were relatively clean, at least in my theater. I don't know how crowded or not crowded it was when you guys saw it, but I think that experience-wise, Shane, you could very easily probably find either a late night or early morning showing where there aren't going to be a lot of people.
And that's something I was looking at it in times that I had available, and everything was absolutely packed when I was looking. So I'm like, nope, not going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it'll be around for at least the next month or two. Like, you don't have to worry about that too much.
Ian, how's the movie doing so far?
The movie is doing exceptionally well, or at least it did on its opening weekend. It actually broke the box office record for highest gross for Labor Day. Yeah,
great.
That was unexpected. In fact, it was originally forecasted to do worse than Black Widow, and it did better than Black Widow opening weekend. It made about 90 million in its first weekend.
Wonderful.
What's going to be a test of time is how it does in following weekends, because post-pandemic, movies do pretty decent their first weekend and then drop off immediately afterwards. And it'll be curious to see what's going to wind up happening after that. But how crowded were the theaters when you fellas saw it, Chris? Was it crowded?
Mine, I saw with Ryan on this past Sunday night. The theater wasn't crowded at all.
Okay, and Murd?
My dad and I went to a 10 p.m. showing on Labor Day night, and we were 2 of 7 people in there.
Nice. Nicely done. Yeah. No, I mean, I went to a showing of Free Guy the next day after I saw Shang-Chi, and that one was about halfway full, and that movie's been out for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
But I'll be very interested to see just how things change, as the weeks progress. Showing wise, and just how well this thing does.
Depending on how it plays out over the next few weeks, there's the one drive-in that's about an hour away, and sometimes they put two really good movies together. That's how I saw, not only did I see Far From Home in the theater, but then like the next week or so, they had Far From Home and Toy Story 4, which I had not seen at that point. So we took the family up to that and saw both of those movies then. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on the drive-in, because we haven't done that this summer yet. And I always love a drive-in, and it's a good time to do a drive-in. So if it pops in there in the next week or two, I might take the family up there if they want to go see it in a drive-in. It'd be kind of fun to see.
Well, I don't think I've ever been to a drive-in. Now that I think about it. Yeah.
God, I can remember seeing like Smokey and the Bandit, Black Hole, Star Wars, all in a drive-in.
So Shang-Chi is going to get a 45-day run. That's the official note before transitioning to video on demand and streaming. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to wind up on Disney Plus exactly on October 18th, but it will at least be available for purchase digitally within 45 days of its initial release. This is, again, strategies are everywhere. This is Disney trying a different strategy than what they tried with Black Widow and seeing whether this works. And this is probably going to wind up being the norm, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Now that this did as well as it did, they haven't said anything for Spider-Man yet. And considering that Spider-Man is also the Sony property that it is, we don't know what that release strategy is going to look like. We do know, however, that when it gets released digitally, it actually goes Netflix first because of a deal that Sony reached with Marvel and also with Netflix. And then after it's on Netflix for a certain amount of time, then it will make its way to Disney Plus. So previous Spider-Man.
What about Eternals?
Eternals, we don't know either. That's definitely going to Disney Plus first, though, because that's just straight up, Disney. Whether it's a premiere access or whether it's a 45-day window or something of the sort, we don't know until it winds up happening.
I think that'll be an interesting movie to follow, because I think that's more unique than even Shang-Chi is as a Marvel movie in the theater.
Yeah. I will also point out that the Spider-Man trailer was not in front of Shang-Chi when I saw it in theaters. I don't know whether it was for either of you two, but
no, it was not.
Yeah, this furthers my belief that if we hadn't have gotten that leak online, because there was a leak,
we wouldn't have gotten that.
We would not have gotten the Spider-Man trailer when we did, because it leaked online right before CinemaCon. Yep. And it was originally supposed to just air directly to CinemaCon, and it was up in the air as to whether or not it was going to wind up also then airing digitally. The minute that horrible cell phone copy of an incomplete trailer made it on the internet, I knew, all right, we're getting it the next day. And lo and behold, that's when we got our Spider-Man trailer.
But I still watched that terrible copy just in case.
So did I. And then I saw the real one the next day, and all I have to say is, hello, Peter.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, man. All right, Shane.
So you guys can talk about the movie in full.
Sounds like a plan, sir.
Oh, brother.
All right. Take care. Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Okay. So first up, now that it's just us three, first major cameo of note, the fact once I saw, and I knew it was coming because I saw it in the trailer, I didn't know how long it was going to be, and it turned out to be way shorter than it actually was, but it was still amazing. Was Wong and Abomination in their cage fight. Great to see Abomination again.
Yeah, it's been 13 years, 12 years. Yeah, something like that.
And somehow within those 13 years, he grew fins.
Yeah, he looks more like the Abomination.
Apparently there's nerve endings in them because he can like flap them a little bit. I read that it was actually Tim Roth doing the grunts, like uncredited.
Really?
Good.
Oh wow, nice. That's even extra awesome because he's supposed to be showing up in She-Hulk in a few months. So I guess he's getting his grunt work in now before he gets even further grunt work in then. But I loved that him and Wong were clearly working together, and that there was a side thing going on that was pretty cool.
They're doing a hustle.
Yep. I wasn't.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Chris.
I was talking about something else. You can continue with the cameos. Go ahead.
Other cameos of note. Well, actually, that's kind of even really it. Now that I think about it, I mean, later on in the movie, we get major cameos, but I don't want to talk about the end credit scene until we actually get there. But what I was going to say is that I wasn't expecting things to be as mythical as they wound up being. I knew we were getting Hong Kong, and I knew we were getting, kung fu. I just didn't know we were getting full Chinese mythology, and I was very impressed with those sequences. I think those went really well.
Yeah, it
Raph
was
saying
go ahead,
he was
go ahead,
just as
Murd.
surprised as you were, Ian. He thought they were going to go martial arts movie with some fantasy elements, and instead what we got was a fantasy movie with some martial arts elements. And yeah, that's rolling Italo in Razor Fist's extremely tasteful automobile. And they're seeing all these mythical Chinese beasts out there through the window, the nine-tailed foxes and the guardian lions and whatnot. I've literally had dreams like that little sequence. So that was just
magnificent,
enchanting for me.
For me, I enjoyed it, but it was very jarring because, again, going back to my reading roots, Shang-Chi in the comic, that's a full martial arts comic. Some of the fight scenes in the comic book are amazing, especially when you have like Mike Zeck or Gene Day, Paul Galassi drawing them in the comics heydays of the 70s into the 80s. And for me, one of the favorite moments of the movie is that fight on the bus is spectacular.
I love that fight so much.
That was like Clark Kent taking off his glasses. I mean, that was an amazing scene. And to me, that was most true to the spirit of the character I always read, because, Shang-Chi is, except maybe besides Iron Fist, the greatest martial artist in the Marvel Universe. And you saw that in that scene. I mean, that was like when I'm a big fan of Awkwafina. I love her show that she has.
Yeah.
And as Murd was saying, I thought they wrote their relationship very well. I love how you can tell they really love each other, but they don't even consummate at the end, which I thought was great.
Yes, agreed.
But
affectionate but platonic.
Yeah, her awe at him, and like she just can't believe what she's seeing.
And the fact that Wong at the end of the movie asked for both of them and not just one of them, that made me happy, because he could have just been like, here, Shang, come with me. Like, no, I want both.
He needs her because she anchors him. I mean, and like she's a classic point of view character for the audience, so we can sort of appreciate the amazing stuff we're seeing because she's reacting the way we would react.
Yep.
Like Never K. Ross, Black Panther, for example, in the comics. So that for me was one of the most thrilling scenes in the entire film. The mythical stuff, I enjoyed it, but again, it's a whole different version of the comic book. It's not the comic, which is, again, is fine.
Right.
I think it worked for what they were trying to do. Most importantly, though, is that Trevor appeared.
Yes. My God. Okay, so Chris, I had a feeling when I saw Disney Plus put up All Hail the King, the one shot that was included on Thor: Dark World, where we first saw Trevor again.
Yeah.
And he was broken out of prison by the 10 rings. I had a feeling we were going to get Trevor in one way or the other. I didn't expect we get nearly as much Trevor as we got in this movie. But talk about the biggest, in some ways, FU to all those fans that were like, well, we didn't get the real Mandarin. And then you wind up getting the Mandarin in this. And even he is poo-poos the name. It's an orange. Like, that's... it was an excellent lead up to it when Shang-Chi's father mentions that, yes, I even lent the 10 rings out to a Westerner who was looking to strike fear into the Western world, and it didn't work out nearly as well as I'd hoped, yada yada yada. This is the Mandarin, but it's not the Mandarin, but it is definitely the 10 rings. And that's what I appreciate. At least the faction of the 10 rings, not the 10 rings themselves, because obviously they're not doing what the 10 rings do. So,
what I thought was interesting about the Mandarin was that, well, first of all, they did still sort of stay somewhat true to the origin, that they hint that, well, maybe he found them in a crater. And then at the end, they reveal that they are of alien origin. So I thought that was really cool. And again, because it just strokes my history itch when they show them fighting Roman legions, right, thousands of years ago, and ancient Chinese armies. I really appreciated that, like they're establishing the sort of the timelessness of his presence.
Oh yeah.
Would someone that ancient and ruthless give it all up because he met a girl? I don't know about that, but it's an old story, so I'll certainly accept that. But again, this I'm going to say this a lot in this review. In the context of the MCU and what they're creating,
Yeah.
I liked what they were doing.
Murd, I know you had been theorizing, or at least hoping when we discussed it leading up to it, that there would at least be some sort of an element to what we got that would, remind us of the 10 rings of yore, the actual comic book 10 rings, and we did not get that.
I was pleased with, as Chris mentioned, the little mention that, maybe they came out of a crater, maybe they were found in a tomb, aka a spaceship, a tomb of aliens that crashed here.
Yep.
And the revelation at the end that they're not made of anything found on Earth, and they appear to be a homing beacon to someplace far out in space. Well, yeah, that was enough for me. Maybe the McLuhans will show up at some point. I was half expecting a version of Fin Fang Foom, actually.
So was I. Yeah.
Well,
so was I.
Apparently, and I missed this, but it was pointed out to me afterwards. Apparently, the planet that it's making the homing beacon to is Fin Fang Foom's home planet.
McLuhan.
Exactly. Yeah. So hey, that means sequel, baby. That's it. We'll get Fin Fang Foom, and hopefully Fin Fang Foom will put you in his pants, because that's
and that's a great point, because since they've established in this first film that there's a mythical element with all these creatures, Fin Fang Foom will work, and the audience won't be taken aback by it because they've already gotten all this in the first movie.
We've already got 1.5 dragons in this movie, so why not Fin Fang Foom eventually?
And what else do we get in this movie? Morris, baby. Okay, let's talk about Morris for a minute. Now, never in my life did I expect my middle name to wind up uttered in a Marvel film of any kind, and yet
that's your handbook entry, Ian.
Exactly. I always say it makes me sound like either a lawyer or a tax guy if I add in the Morris. Hello, I'm Ian Morris Levinstein, and I'm here to help you. When it comes to merchandising, they're sure as hell are going to be able to merchandise Morris. And my favorite Trevor scene was when Morris first shows up and everyone else can see him, and Trevor is essentially like, oh, Morris, you're real. Because I would have thought I was hallucinating if I saw this faceless, like, half bird elephant-esque creature, roaming about, and yet there he is, baby. And man, it could have came off creepy. Instead, Morris is actually kind of adorable.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where, first of all, I love when, like, Ben Kingsley is one of the greatest actors alive.
Agreed. Yep.
So I loved when I see him in a role like this, because, again, an actor that great can do anything. But when he's describing how Planet of the Apes inspired him to become an actor, and how he believed that those were actual simians riding horses, but they were just taught to do it as actors. Again, I nearly wet myself. I mean,
I knew you would love that scene.
Yeah,
Chris.
it was just
it's
tremendous.
a Shang-Chi movie with a Planet of the Apes reference. It was just a very Doug Monkey movie, definitely.
and I am of the mind. I know some people do really dislike Iron Man 3. I like Iron Man 3 for a lot of different reasons. Trevor's just one of them. Just to get him back made me happy, and I'm glad that he didn't die, because they could have very easily just brought him back to kill him off. And he's still out there somewhere. So the Ringo-esque Trevor still lives out there for us to put into whatever other movies we want to put him into. So go figure.
Kind of wish they showed us what happened to him after the Battle of Ta Lo. I mean, did he decide to live there, to continue to find himself, to learn meditation or something? Or did he release himself back out into the world and just stumble into, like, Ant-Man 3 or something?
Oh, yeah. And speaking of which, it feels like at this point, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is establishing that San Francisco is just about as important as New York City. Because this is now like Ant-Man San Francisco, Shang-Chi is San Francisco. Like, we're having a lot of stuff take place in San Francisco.
Well, is Venom in San Francisco, or is that LA?
Venom, I think Venom's also San Francisco, now that you mention it. But Venom's its own side thing and all that jazz.
When you think about the thrilling chase scenes in the classic film Bullet with Steve McQueen.
Yes.
I mean, San Francisco is a thrilling city to shoot movies in. I mean, plus Daredevil lived there back in the comic in the Bronze Age of the Black Widow.
That's very true. That's very true.
You know,
was very disappointed that the IMAX version of the Spider-Man trailer essentially let us know that those arms that we
That
saw.
was clearly a policeman. Yeah.
I know, but it's that it's not Matt. So like maybe Charlie Cox is in it, maybe he's not, but he's not that guy, unfortunately.
Two comic related things in the movie that I did enjoy. First of all, as Murd mentioned, so Razor Fist.
Yes.
So now if you read the Shang-Chi comic, I'm talking about again the classic Doug Monk run.
Mhm.
When he's not doing espionage, even when he is, there's some really wacky villains he fights.
Yeah.
And they were sensible here. So they had tip of the hat. They bring a Razor Fist character, and luckily, because in the comic, both his hands have blades, which leads to all kinds of questions and jokes. And it was smart just to make it one hand in the comic, in the movie, I mean, which I think was sensible.
Yes.
I also like how the Mandarin said, well, at one point, I've been known by many names. I've also been called Master Khan, which is a classic villain from Power Man and Iron Fist.
Mhm.
That was a cool little touch. And visually, what thrilled me, the Mandarin's, let's call it his premier assassin, the man with the mask on. I think he was a Psy fan who, if you look at in the Shang-Chi comic, like those like the elite assassins, well, in the comic it's Fu Manchu, but I'm pretty sure that the costume they had that guy in was reminiscent of that, and he looked really cool. That was a great visual.
And he was the first one to buy it when the little mini soul-sucking demons get out.
Yeah, but and the other thing I wanted to bring up, we mentioned before, what's the name of the lead actor again? I'm sorry.
Simu Liu.
I really enjoyed his performance. I again with the kind of character they had in play. I thought he really, first of all, his relationship with Awkwafina again, I think was really well realized, well written, well acted. You believe their chemistry, their friendship, like when they have the dinner party with the old high school friends. That was all really well done. But I also really appreciated, he really sold I really just want to be a regular person, and like he's very kind of late, like even on the bus, like hey guy, like back off, like he didn't want to get in a fight, like he clearly did not, and it only made when he starts fighting all the more explosive, and again, of course, his sister was great. That whole dynamic.
I meant to ask Chris, the sister is a new-ish character, correct?
I'm trying to think now.
He had a half sister in the comics, I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
he had a sister in the comics. Yes, he had a sister in the comics.
Because I know Gene Yang introduced a sister. I haven't read the stories, but
no,
he
did. But
Okay.
he, in the comic, I mean, they didn't bring her into the film, and Murder recognizes, but Leiko Wu is like his main love interest in the comic. She's like a fellow espionage agent, but I guess he's not going to use her. But I liked how they brought in Awkwafina, not just for the comedy, but and props to her in the writing. I think they really sold their friendship.
Oh yeah,
and how important she is to him, and like the little scene when they go to see like the grandmother in the beginning, and those touches, that's very Marvel. Those touches are very important to making the characters more tangible.
No, she could have very easily came off as annoying, which is possible when they try to force in a comic relief character.
Yeah.
Because I've had issues with that in other movies, Marvel included. I feel like at times the Thor movies, although I do appreciate them, fell into that with certain characters at times. But she never got grading for me. I think that they did, and the arc that they did with her learning how to shoot the arrows and what have you, and that actually wind up being one of the main factors of defeating the big villain in the end, was a very interesting touch. But talk about the sister and the relationship that was built there. Excellent acting, first off. Terrific fight scenes involving both of them, and the fact that by the end of the movie, once you sit through and you get to that final after credits scene, and she sits down, and ladies and gentlemen, we've got Lady Mandarin on our hands. That was, I kind of had a feeling we were going there, but then once we did, and yeah, it can't be Psylocke, but at least we've got a version of Lady Mandarin that looks like she's going to kick some ass.
And I wonder, based on the coda there, are they going to, is this another television show they're planning?
I think it's going to be I think it's the sequel to Shang-Chi, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything TV wise planned at the moment. I mean, she could easily wind up showing up in something. But yeah, no, I think they're more setting up for the sequel than anything else. Makes sense to me, character wise. Speaking of which, I mean, since we mentioned one of the after credit scenes, we may as well touch on the first of them, where my theater gasped the minute that we got to that, and we get not only Bruce Banner but Captain Marvel looking over the where exactly these 10 rings come from, and they can't find the origins. Nothing lines up with anything that they know. Get a very funny scene with Captain Marvel having to go at one point, and like, well, Bruce has my number, and Bruce is just like, no, I don't. That was pretty great. But also, Bruce is Bruce again. When did that happen?
Yeah, we were wondering about that.
Well, the only constant is change.
Yep.
That's true. Seems to have a lot more gray hair too than the last time that we saw him too. I don't know whether that's
all that well. Yeah.
No.
I didn't recognize either one of them for a few seconds, and I was like, "Oh, okay, Ruffalo. Who's that lady? Oh, star in her chest. Okay, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel." Fine. There was no gasping in our theater.
Yeah. Well, and I just love Wong showing up the way he did at the end again. Basically proving the story right, and then the karaoke to drive it home, baby.
And of course, Wong came along because, of course, he would.
Of course.
Yes, and I was happy to hear that Aquafina could carry a tune a little better when she had backing instrumentation, because when she was shouting the lyrics in that ninja's face, it just, well, not ninja, that warrior's face, it just, the notes were not there.
Oh man. What do we think of Michelle Yeoh's performance as Ying Nan?
I just love her in everything she appears in.
I agree.
She brings automatic gravitas to anything.
I was happy to see her just because she wasn't Shang-Chi and was it Xialing? Is that the sister's name?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't her mother.
Yes.
I was worried that we were going to. I mean, I've complained in the past about how there were too many dead mothers in the superhero genre, and the current works have been trying to reverse that trend somewhat clunkily, I have to say. So we had Janet Van Dyne is dead. No, she's in the quantum realm. We've had Aquaman's mother is dead. No, she's in Jurassic Park somewhere. And now I was afraid this is going to be another clumsily resurrected surprise she's alive kind of moment. I was kind of glad that it was instead her sister who was able to impart the same kind of motherly wisdom to the siblings without the actual reveal that the mother was still alive. She died a heroic death, and I'm glad they just left it at that. And it turns out that Wu Wen was completely wrong about her still being alive somewhere.
Yep.
And what I liked about that also was it really established just how twisted the Mandarin is that,
oh yeah,
and like there's a great moment where Awkwafina goes, well, he turned you into an assassin at 14. She's like, there's nothing okay about that. And that does go right back to the heart of the comic, where, I mean, it's in the comic, of course, it's the whole Fu Manchu thing, but it's the same concept, is that the father, twisted the son into a living weapon. And the movie obviously, really kind of explores, well, what are the psychological impact of that? And like, what does that even mean?
And the movie does a great job of driving that home too.
Yeah.
This is not normal, but also just how twisted Wu Wen and Tony Chu does an amazing job of driving that home too. Just how much he's lost himself once
Tony Leung, isn't it? It's not Tony. Is it Tony Leung?
Tony Chu Wei Long. He's got a whole long name.
Gotcha. My apologies.
No worries. But anyway, just that he's able to drive home the fact that he is that far gone after the death of the mother. He keeps hearing her, but it's almost like he keeps hearing her out of guilt more than anything else. And
what is guilt? Because his life as a brutal conqueror and plunderer for literally centuries.
Yep.
It all came to a head when and led to the death of the only person he probably ever really cared about.
Absolutely.
And his grasp on humanity, it was so tenuous because again, he's so old, right? And he's seen, like he says to the one warrior, like, dude, I've lived like 10 of your lifetimes. Don't speak to me.
Yeah.
When it's just her keeping it, basically she was just holding back really the darkness that had been there for all this time, because someone that old who's committed that much horror and suffering, it's not something he's ever going to really be able to escape.
And he also winds up driving away the two people that could potentially still love him in the process. You know,
The scene where he goes to the bar and murders the men who killed his wife.
Oh my God.
Was really well done. And a lot of us from the perspective of the little boy, Shang, is watching his father tear all these people apart. It was well done.
It really was.
Yeah. That scene also drove home for me what a fair trade-off we have in the 10 rings that we got as in the movie versus the 10 rings of the Mandarin in the comics. And I'm sorry to see that we didn't quite get those weapons and the man who wielded them in filmic form, but
right.
Wenwu and his bracelet-sized rings, it's just such an awesome visual.
Yeah.
And it's a really formidable weapon. I mean, we may yet learn that each of the 10 rings, the 10 movie rings, has its own special property.
That's true.
Name. It won't necessarily be like Ice Blast and Black Light and Mento Intensifier or whatever, but we'll probably learn that the Mandarin, well, not the Mandarin, well, I can't call him Mandarin because he's not at all the same character. Wenwu, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
Wenwu, just because of his own lack of imagination, never realized how much more these weapons could do. I think eventually Shang-Chi will be the one to unlock their truest potential. But even the rings as Wenwu was using them are just really terrifying. And that scene that Chris mentioned in the bar where he's just using them to slaughter everyone he thinks is responsible for the death of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It drives home just how much power the man does have at his disposal, should he choose to use it.
And for that matter, Murd, even thinking about the color of the 10 rings, that the color that they emanate, like the chi that they emanate, the color changes when Shang-Chi is using it versus when his father is using it. Says to me that, there could be untapped potential there as someone who can truly harness them to their fullest potential is there versus someone who's literally just using them out of rage and to conquer more than anything else. It is very, very possible. Yeah. Just overall, this surprised the heck out of me, and I loved it even more than I was expecting it to. And just very deserving of being a new Avenger, if that's the direction that we're going. You know, I think that that Shang could very much be that I wouldn't quite say a Hawkeye character, because no, he's more than that, but like the fighter that you need on an Avengers team. And with those 10 rings at his hand, might be a good person to take on when we finally have to take on Kang, you know, just saying. So who knows? Kang. Any thoughts about the movie that I missed? You know what? I guess we could talk about the actual CGI a little bit too. Believable CGI for the dragons and what have you. Like it didn't feel nearly as fake as certain moments of, like, say for example, Black Panther did. Where like I didn't get nearly as many rubber men in this. And I know that a lot of the fight scenes were actual practical effects, you know, going as Jackie Chan as possible with it. You know, a lot of the actors did their own fight scenes, and when they didn't, there were actual stuntmen doing it. But obviously you're still going to have CGI involved, and it wasn't clunky. Everything kind of looked pretty silky smooth to me. It was pretty well done. Yeah. Yep. And the world they created too, even if it gave me shades of Godzilla and Kong a little bit, with that, like, you know, Middle Earth world that they found. I really, really dug every minute of it, and all the creatures that we saw there, including the lions and all that, were just mystical and wonderful, and made you believe that there is something else out there in the many, many realms of the Marvel universe that we've yet to explore.
One of the few remarks my dad had to make during the running time of the movie was, "That's a cool lion." He agrees. And the bamboo forest too. Just the
that was a great visual.
Whipping around.
That was great.
Wind and as if alive. That's all the times we had to find the characters had to find their way through that was very, very well accomplished with CGI.
Yep. And I'd be remiss to forget about mentioning the director, Destin Daniel Cretton. Terrific job all around, and I can't wait to see whatever, you know, action movie he has next in him, because he's done everything. Like I mean, he's done mostly non-action movies before this. Just taking a look at his stuff, like he did Just Mercy recently with Michael B. Jordan, which is very much not a the type of movie that you would think from somebody who just directed Shang-Chi, and yet there we are. But he's also directing a TV series called Tokyo Vice, which might be more within that realm sometime in the near future. But yeah, excellent work, and I can't wait for Eternals.
Yeah.
Like this is making me really jazzed for Marvel all over again.
Going to show us yet another flavor of Phase 4 coming out in Eternals, because that's going to have very little in common with this movie or any other Marvel movie to date, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exciting because, as we all know, the Marvel Universe in the comics is so vast.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can find a way to take, very few people outside of, our world have heard of the Eternals.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that they're going to try to bring in more of these properties to the screen. And like I said before, with Shang-Chi, I enjoyed the movie thoroughly, even though it was not the comic Shang-Chi, but that's okay because what they did, I think, worked within this new universe they're building, this movie version of and TV version of these characters. So just the fact that there's now a movie about Shang-Chi that the whole world now knows about.
Oh yeah.
Is wonderful. And Eternals, and it looks like they're I'm only going by the trailer, but they're definitely going to the well a bit in terms of the characters, and the Black Knight's going to be in it, which I'm thrilled about.
Yep.
There's, as long as they can, they can take in all these new properties and find ways to both retain the essence, but also make them, tangible for a mass audience. We're going to have great stuff coming out.
Yeah. I have faith. Faith in Chloe Zhao when it comes to Eternals. I think that just visually stunning from everything that I've seen leading up to it so far. And
the Celestials are going to be in it. I mean, come on, that's essentially Eternals. I'm thrilled.
Let's also just think about the fact that just how much they wasted the Inhumans as something that could have been something.
I didn't actually watch that.
Yeah, neither did I.
I heard it was pretty poor.
It was terrible. And it could have been what the Eternals wound up being if they'd stuck to it being a movie, and if it had come out around the same time with the right people behind it. I'm sure it could have been fantastic. Instead, not so much, and that's a damn shame. So, oh well.
But they can always reboot, Ian. Like, come on, they can always. Does anybody even remember that show?
It's off in its own world now. They don't even like to say that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the same, universe as this anymore. So they can easily say that that's off on its own thing anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's give our freckin' swears, gentlemen. Murd, what do you got?
I had about 3 3/4, and I have just a huge wellspring of happiness for the sake of Raph and all of our other Asian American geek friends out there who, in addition to all we got out of the movie, they get a superhero movie with a protagonist who represents their culture. And that's a very good thing.
Amen to that, 100%. I give this a solid 4. I think it was well beyond the expectations of what I had, and I'm hyped. I'm jazzed for something other than a Disney Plus series. For the first time in a little while here for Marvel, and I can't wait to see what comes next. Chris?
I'd also give it a 4.
Yep. Okay, excellent. And we shall see. To be determined on where we're going next after this. Cinematically, we shall see. But there is one place that I know we're going next after this, because guess what, gentlemen? We have time.
Thought I wouldn't see it coming.
God, I feel better.
Look, the movie had karaoke, so we had to have at least a little bit of air harp in our life. It's time once again for Muddle the Murd here.
I think it's the invisible dragons and hunduns floating behind me that are playing the harp this time, because clearly I miss it completely.
It's all right. We all felt it in our bones. Once again, time for Muddle the Murd here on Comic Geek Speak, and the Murd has more.
Yes, thank you, Ian. All right, Muddle the Murd is a trivia contest that we do here on the show from time to time when there's time in a recording. And in order to participate, you, the listener, have only to come up with 3 comic book trivia questions, 1 Marvel question, 1 DC, and 1 about comics from some other publisher besides Marvel and DC. The 3 questions must also break down chronologically to 1 about comics published before 1970, 1 about comics published between 1970 and 2000 inclusive, and 1 about comics published after 2000. You also need to include the answers to these questions, of course, so that we'll know whether or not I have gotten them correct when I attempt to answer them. And you email them to comicgeekspeak@gmail.com with Muddle the Murd in the subject line. Quizmaster Ian will find them, he will put them into a special folder, and then he will, at some unpredictable moment, spring them on me and expect me to answer them. And if I fail to answer even one of the 3 comics questions you submit correctly, then you will have muddled the Murd, and I will then be required to mail you at my own expense a fantastic prize.
Indeed.
And the prize we're still waiting to give away, I just happen to have sitting close at hand here because, as I said, I kind of saw this coming. It is a graphic novel entitled Prime Suspects, The Anatomy of Integers and Permutations. And it is a crime noir graphic novel mystery that's intended to teach concepts of mathematics. Seems like a good time. I've compared it to kind of like a hard-boiled version of MathNet from Square One TV on PBS back in the day. So, if you or anyone in your life is of the sort to enjoy a number noir crime mystery, then by all means send in those questions and see if you can muddle the Murd to win yourself this copy that I have sitting here next to me.
Excellent. And as a reminder, these questions cannot be too obscure. They cannot be too difficult to discover inside of a comic. So if you're asking questions about what color nose hair Superman had in Action Comics number 405, then we're probably not going to let that one go. We're gonna ask you to try again. So just a note, and nothing about hostess ads, no matter how tasty.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and let's move on here to the 3rd attempt. That's right, the 3rd attempt by the one, the only, David Beasley. Greetings once again. They say the best things come in 3s, so here's my 3rd muddle attempt. And he begins pre-1970 DC. Although considered an imaginary story, Superman 149 has the Man of Steel do what for the first time?
Do what for the first time? How about die?
Bada boom!
Oh, God.
Oh man, got him in 1. Well done. Well done, sir.
Sorry, this isn't one of those trilogies where the 3rd chapter is the best.
That was like Indiana Jones shooting the sword wielder in the first Raiders of the Lost Ark. My God.
Excellent.
Flattered by the comparison, Chris.
2 Indiana Jones references in a show makes me a happy camper. All right, moving on to 1970 to 2000 Marvel. Favorite of mine from the year 2000 actually. Mutant X had Alex Summers of Earth 616 inhabit the body of Alex Summers of Earth 1298. On this Earth, he was married to Madeline Pryor, and they had a son named Scotty. In issue 1 of the series, who is revealed to be Scotty's nanny?
All right, and I know I've read this comic. I think it's the only issue of the Mutant X series that I bothered to pick up. But, who is... Only other thing I can remember about that alternate reality is that Storm was a vampire there, called herself Bloodstorm.
Yep, and she showed up in multiple instances over the years, including in the main 616 as I think a member of the Astonishing X-Men for quite some time.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's all in my future. Who would have made a good... I don't know, Cerebro.
This one's a weird one because the answer is Elektra.
That is weird. Okay.
Yep, Electro was the nanny. I had completely forgotten about this, and I read every issue of Mutant X, so it did not come up very often. But yes, the answer was indeed Elektra. Moving on to post-2000 Independent, falling upon Dark Horse this time. In the 2007 Free Comic Book Day debut story of the Umbrella Academy, which member is presumably killed by Murder Magician?
Well, I'm pretty sure this isn't right, but it's the only Umbrella Academy member whose name I can remember. 2007 is a future event for me. So I'm going to say the White Violin.
Correct answer is Rumor / Allison Hargreaves. Her powers created an indistinguishable copy of herself that is killed in the story.
Murd prevailed again.
Yep.
Those were some very good questions, Dave. Unfortunately,
Great questions. Yeah.
You just led with the one that I was able to nail immediately.
Yep. He led with the imaginary story, but it is not in our imagination that you avoided the muddle. So well done there, sir.
Yep, but we encourage you to do this Douglas Adams style and make this a trilogy in 4 parts.
Don't entice him. Oh, wait, entice him. Make it happen. Make it happen. Well done. Alrighty, gentlemen. I think with that, our bolt is pretty much shot.
Indeed.
So, job well done all around as we cover 2 movie reviews in 1 episode and fit in a muddle. I call that a job well done.
Mm-hmm. It's probably a CGS first, a movie review double feature, new and old.
Well, maybe we'll have to make this happen more often. If
I like it, gentlemen. I like
if the
it.
crowd appreciates it, that is. So please let us know your thoughts, and we'll let you know from there what happens next. Excellent. Well, once again, we're sponsored, as always, by you, the listeners, over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. You can also send old school donations over to comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php if you'd like to support the show. And as said earlier, iTunes reviews or just spreading the word is just as helpful. We thank you for your years of support of the show. And also a note, just because it only happened a few days ago as we released this episode, happy 55th birthday to the one and only Jamie D.
Yes.
That happened just a few days ago. He would have been 55, and I reminisced by listening to the 50th birthday special that Pants put out 5 years prior, and reminisced about the Shiznit Pimp and all the good times that we all had. So here's to you, Jamie. All right, and with that, I will hand it over to the Shane stand-in for this evening, and that will be none other than Adam Murdo, as I see the look on his face, and I pause ever so
I
slightly.
realized that I completely forgot that I needed to say it again this time. Okay, but I'm ready now.
Okay, excellent. The floor is yours.
Mm-hmm. If you'd like to send us an email, our address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, you can call 267-702-6642 and ream us out orally. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @comicgeekspeak. You can like us on Facebook, and while you're there, you can also join our Comic Geek Speak supergroup, where you can join in discussions of our different episodes and also topics that are geeky in nature but unrelated to the show with your fellow CS listeners and Facebook users. You can also go to the comicforums.vanillacommunity.com, which is our original online forum where you can do pretty much the same thing. We'd like to give special thanks, as always, to those of you who've donated monetarily to the show recently or in the distant past, because the show would not be what it is today without your help. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You say Shang-Chi, I say Shang-Chi, Shang-Chi, Shang-Chi. Let's
Murd got dark and
whole
kinky
thing
with the
off.
whole reaming oral thing. It was great.
What?